There we go. Boop-a-doop-a-doop-boop-boo. Good evening, everyone. We're getting ready to get recording, so bear with us for a moment. So welcome to the pre-show of the podcast, I guess is what it's now being called. So this is where
Welcome
we
to the
usually talk.
pre-show.
Welcome to the pre-show. Tonight we have a match that nobody will care about, and then we'll go into a pay-per-view that everybody kind of cares about. There you go. Or, well, I can't even do an NFL pre-show because I don't even know what they do anymore. Welcome to an NFL pre-show where we all pretend that we're John Madden, but we're really not John Madden, but we're going to pretend like we're John Madden. John Madden. Yeah, welcome to the podcast pre-show where we talk about the stories that didn't necessarily make the cut this week. But the funniest thing is there aren't too many. Listeners, you guys made your viewpoint clear. And we are, and the stories that most of you put in, we're discussing tonight anyway. Because we got endless stuff of Battlefront. You need to cover Battlefront. You need to You need to cover this sexual harassment story. You need to cover this sexual harassment story. And we will be doing more of that, but I'm just gonna let people know in advance before we record the podcast. This is the last time. And the main reason being is that this is going to be going for months.
Yeah.
And there's no ending. There's no end in sight. And frankly, it's just it's one of those things where it almost feels like we're breaking the politics rule, if that's a weird way to put it. Because we're now talking about all this stuff, even though it's entertainment, people. And the first couple of times I was willing to do it. But now it's just like, everybody's coming out of the woodwork. I'm pretty sure we're going to find out that, I mean, I'm trying to think who's the lowest end of the totem pole when it comes to actors right now. He's going to have sexual harassment allegations. It's going to be cool for everybody to have sexual harassment allegations.
Yeah. In fact, topical, this tweet from Mary Elizabeth McGlynn. Gene Simmons was at a studio today. I think she might be reposting. I don't know if this happened to her, but I saw this on her feed. Gene Simmons was at a studio today. Are you
about to say that Mary Elizabeth McGlynn has accusers of sexual harassment?
Hold on, let me read it.
Okay.
Gene Simmons was at a studio today. He said hello. I went to shake his hand. He pointed to his dick, saying that's the fun machine. I took a moment of pause after hearing he did that to a number of other women at a studio. I followed him out of the parking lot and called him out on it. Me, I went to shake your hand and you pointed to your dick. Gene, I did not. Me, yes, you did. That is not okay. Gene, I was joking. Me, you guys need to learn that it's not funny. I walked away and I'm still shaking for standing up for myself, almost feeling guilty, but I'm so glad I said it. #me too.
Well,
I don't know if this is her like I said, I don't know if this is her personal story or if she's reposting another personal story.
The downside here is simply this. As you're reading that, I'm literally having the thought of, would any of us really put it past Gene Simmons to do something like that? And in some cases, you know, I've actually been having this debate with a few friends. This whole harassment deal, yeah, it's their fault. They're the ones that engaged in the behavior, but, well, I hate to be the dick here, but it's also kind of our fault because we put them up on such a high pedestal to a point where they can act like this. This is why in a lot of cases, like I look up to a lot of voice actors and I look up to a lot of actors, but I don't deify them, if that makes sense. I look up to them as fellow colleagues.
Right.
I look up to them as fellow workers of the craft, so to speak. And at that point, I feel like that's the way that it should be done. And unfortunately, part of the problem here is also the fact that, you know, when Charlie Sheen goes off and does the bullshit that he does, can we really blame him? Some of us actually enabled the action.
Yeah, you know, fame does weird shit to you, to the mind. So
Well, it just
I see. I think I see what you're getting at here, and I think it's like
it's not that it does weird shit to the mind. It enables certain levels of justification and rationalization within people.
right.
And that's not necessarily us doing it. That's them twisting their own mind in that regard. But when you enable that behavior, and here's the thing, like, these are actors. They are literally taught, and it's the profession to say, if you do this specific way and you get a response, then that's how you should be doing it,
Hmm.
kind of thing. So I mean, the perfect example is most recently Alec Baldwin's Donald Trump. If he had done this 10 years ago, do any of us think that that would have been as popular? I'm talking during the Apprentice days, guys. Would that have been half as popular as it was? No. The only
Probably not.
reason that it's as popular as it is right now, I'm not saying it wouldn't be popular. It just wouldn't be as skyrocketed popular as it is right now.
Yeah.
And part of that is because guess who's president? Guess who, guess who has all the controversy surrounding him? That's why it works. That's why Alec eventually won an Emmy for it, kind of thing. So that's why in a lot of cases I'm saying right here, right now, I get it. You want to bring these to our attention. You think they ought to be talked about, but frankly, the more we talk about them, the more publicity we give to them. And the other problem that I have here is that if this gets, and I'll get into it when we actually discuss it today, this is a snowball that not a whole lot of people realize isn't in their control. Once you start that whole thing, the snowball, we've seen every cartoon, guys. The snowball grows and it eventually becomes something that you can't control and you can't stop. And so at that point, as I'm going to get into later, this is going to create problems later down the line, and we're already starting to see them. So that's already my concern. And then the other thing that people wanted to bring up to us, obviously, was the whole Battlefront situation. We will be talking about that. Don't you worry. That's going to be brought up. But the other thing, too, is we are going to be talking about a bunch of other stories, but I also am probably going to be aiming us for the next couple of weeks in a more positive direction, because our Prozac budget is in the negative. It's in the negatives of the negatives right now. If there was
Right.
ever such a thing as a negative 7-digit, we probably hit it with the Prozac budget right now. I don't even know what look I was doing right there, but
Here's something to unfortunately add further to the budget. For Dragon Ball fans, you've suffered a loss today. The Japanese voice of Bulma recently just died.
Yes, I had heard. And I am sad. Just because of anybody who's involved with all of that. Like, I don't know every single Japanese voice actor for Dragon Ball, but I know Ryusei Nakao. And if he passed away, I would be sad. I would be. He's a really good actor. And welcome, Romney. Here we go. So
not the weirdest story I've come in on.
No, I'm just explaining. So, we don't really have too much as far as like pre-show stories. And it's just simply because everybody wanted to bring, hey, go talk about this sexual harassment thing here, go talk about this Battlefront thing here. So at that point, I'm, like, we do have a few, and I'm actually trying to, at least one I want to bring up. And I'm just trying to track it down in my feed. But aside from that, yeah, it's let's keep things more positive, shall we? I mean, we're coming up on a holiday weekend. I know that some of us get it and some of us don't, but we don't have to talk about everything negative, right?
Yeah, ideally.
Right.
Ideally.
And then I put stuff in the agenda that it's my fault, guys. I'm the one who makes the agenda. Let's see, where is it? Crap. I had it too. And people wanted me to bring it up. Oh, I guess we can talk about that. So now we know the Fantastic Beasts 2 title. The crimes of the what is it? Crimes of Grindelwald.
Grindelwald.
Grindelwald. Okay, thank you. So yay! I'm not going to say that I'm absolutely excited. I can wait. I'm good for. Oh, here was one thing that people want us to talk about. So it is official. Disney has shut down Marvel Heroes. So for those who don't know what Marvel Heroes is, it's about as close to saying that X-Men Legends or Marvel Ultimate Alliance went MMO, because it basically adopts some mechanics that are like it, but it's more, I would actually dare say it's more Marvel meets Diablo. In the way that
Basically, it was their answer to the popular MMO City of Heroes. Both DC and Marvel put out their own MMOs to try to compete, and well,
yeah, and the problem is, like, I struggle calling it an MMO. I really do, because it didn't feel like it was that big a scale for an MMO. Like, it felt like a Diablo game. So like at that point, if it was online, then it was online. But yeah, it was actually supposed to come out on consoles. I think it came out this fall on consoles, and they have just officially announced that the online service is going away. I wish I could say that I was disappointed by this, guys, but I haven't played Marvel Heroes and probably since it launched.
I completely forgot it existed. So,
did you play it?
No, I mean I knew of it, but it was literally one of those things where when you brought it up, I'm just like, oh yeah, I forgot Marvel did that. I didn't realize it was still around.
I played it, but that was just because me and my brother were looking for stuff to play, and he wasn't really wanting to play MMOs anymore, except everything that he picked was an MMO. So at that point, it's like, oh, I want to pick up this game. I'm like, but it's an MMO. Like, no, we don't have to play it like that. And then it'd be like a full-on MMO, and he'd get burned out again. And I'm like, okay, can you pick a game that isn't an MMO? Yeah, let's pick Marvel Heroes. Wait, that's got MMO-esque features. And then eventually he left it too.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? You pick a game and we'll stick to it. So yeah, the Marvel Heroes unfortunately shut down, and yes, it's sad. I don't like hearing about games shutting themselves down, but I mean that's kind of the nature of the beast when you're dealing with online games. Is if they are not getting a certain profit margin, it's difficult to keep them up and running. So it's sad. I don't want to hear that, but it's the nature of the beast, as it were.
Yep.
Yeah. Where's the other one? Dang it. People wanted us to talk about Star Trek Discovery, and I actually refused because I've only watched like 2.5 episodes, and I refuse to go back to CBS All Access. And these guys haven't watched it, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to ask them now, does it?
Yeah. Especially with what I've...
Go ahead.
Like, with what I've heard about Discovery, like, and because I have Star Trek friends who are Star Trek fans on both sides. I have friends who are fans of the J.J. Abrams films and fans who loathe the J.J. Abrams films, and that it's kind of and so I figured, I'm not going to pay the extra money to use CBS All Access just to watch it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did because me and Brinton did the Star Trek episode of Geek, Why We Geek. I was about to say Geek News. That's not right. We did that, but my problem wasn't with the series. My problem was with the player. That player is atrocious. I'm not even kidding. People think I'm exaggerating on the matter, but I'd get 10 minutes in, it would lag, and I would sit at a loading screen for 10 to 15 minutes. Then I maybe get another 3 or 4, maybe even 5 minutes into the episode, loading screen, 10 to 15 minutes. And for those who follow the Run of the Ropes podcast, I criticize the WWE Network's player pretty frequently. This was worse than that.
Yeah.
I didn't even think you could get worse than that.
Well, life finds a way.
Thank you, Dr. Malcolm. I find this strangely appropriate considering me and Alex saw Thor Ragnarok this week to do that, because that's basically my viewpoint on the Jeff Goldblum character in that. He's basically playing Ian Malcolm as a supervillain.
That's chaos theory.
That's chaos theory. The other one too, Injustice 2 announcement, Ninja Turtles as DLC characters. I don't play Injustice.
I haven't played Injustice.
I've tried the engine. Like, I haven't played Injustice 2 specifically, but it's built on the Mortal Kombat engine.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've gone on record. In the ongoing debate between Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, I'm in the Street Fighter camp. I like faster-paced fighting games. That's why I play Guilty Gear. Honestly,
I like the story modes of MK9 and MKX. I do. So much so that's actually made me interested to try out Injustice, but I don't have a beef with Injustice. I just don't have a whole lot of motivation to go to it.
Yeah, the problem I have with it is just it feels so slow and sluggish. And the other problem is that NetherRealm just doesn't put any emphasis on the music. Because, I mean, when people think of a fighting game theme, okay, Ryu's theme, Guile's theme, they immediately pop into your head. Mortal Kombat's got none of that. It's a problem with a lot of...
Didn't they at one point, like for either MK9 or MKX, they were actually talking to I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was the composer for the new reboot of Killer Instinct. And then eventually he went off to go do I think Doom, the new Doom. And I think he's got another project in the works. I think they talked to him and they couldn't come to an agreement. That's considering how good that music is. I like, that's my workout music. The entire soundtrack to Killer Instinct. So the fact is they missed out on that. That's an amazing opportunity lost.
Well, and it's part of an underlying problem with American-made games in general, where they kind of forget, hey, theme music is kind of an important aspect of it, because you just don't really see it. I mean, the closest American game theme I can think of that comes to mind would be Halo, and even then, it's been a long time.
I would like to know who the composer to Halo is, just because, I mean, he's got some decent tracks in there.
Michael Salvatore and Martin O'Donnell.
Salvatore or Sabatori?
Salvatore.
Salvatore. Okay.
SALV Tory.
Yeah, and so
I want to hear their tracks.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of the other problem I have with NetherRealm games is that all the music sounds so generic. It sounds the same. If you played one background track, you wouldn't be able to tell what arena it's supposed to be.
For as much as we want to call Ed Boon a visionary, and I'm not saying he isn't. I think he's a decent guy, and I think he's had some decent ideas. But I mean, this is kind of the flaw that eventually you find in any visionary game developer, is that they don't necessarily think of the entire picture, and there's usually one or two things left out. And for Ed Boon, it's music. And I mean, granted, I would actually stand in the camp and say that the music for Mortal Kombat hasn't ever been truly memorable, but there's still some tracks that sound better than others. I don't know. I've always considered it to be like one of the downsides of it, whereas this is something that Street Fighter capitalizes on.
Yeah, whereas like the only music I remember from Mortal Kombat is a song they never use anymore, and that was the original theme of the original arcade and Genesis versions, because it sounds like a theme to a martial arts movie, which, you know, was the inspiration. But now they've basically gotten too obsessed with their own mythology, and that's kind of why I can't really stand any of those games. They think that the mythology is enough, but honestly, it's like trying to read a tome of American comics, but with all of the issues that fill in all the backstory missing. But just all the events, if you want to see where this came from, read this issue. And that's not in the trade. I guess I have to buy another trade.
Are we talking Mortal Kombat?
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Street Fighter, that's a whole separate can of worms. That was more of a case of, we wrote ourselves into a corner with the Satsui no Hado when we don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's kind of my beef. Like, I actually felt like probably up until Alpha, they had good story ideas in mind. I'm going to say I'm kind of iffy with the whole Third Strike story, but that's where they kind of started writing themselves into a corner, because that's when they had to go. People loved Akuma, and so at that point you had Evil Ryu, and we had to have more stuff on that.
Yeah, although I will say the Udon comics are probably the best thing for the story, because they have somehow managed to take the very confusing Street Fighter story and actually make it entertaining. Because I was following Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers, and yeah, it goes through there's a lot to digest when they're explaining the lore, but they find a way to make it entertaining.
Yeah. Now I would say like either one of them is kind of hit or miss. Like they had some good moments in their stories, but then it's mostly like you go through the paces.
Yeah, I guess that's why I do like at least Darkstalkers when I've played it, because although, yeah, you don't get a lot with the story, you at least have interesting enough backstories and interesting enough characters that you kind of want to revisit, although I'm still making my way through playing through all the main arcade things to get all the unlocks, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'll say this. Rikuo is hard to use. Rikuo was really hard for me to use.
Yeah. I never mastered that character.
Yep.
There were a few. There, it was one of those things that actually kind of bugged me. It's like there were a few characters in the Stalker series I wish I could have mastered.
Yep.
I'm fine with it.
Although
Oh,
speaking,
while I'm
yeah,
thinking,
like,
I keep on forgetting to ask you about this, Romney. So, what are your thoughts on Dragon Ball Fighters?
I've yet to actually get my hands on it, so I don't really have an opinion.
Well, I was actually going to ask, like, are you against the idea or other things like that? Because I might actually need some help. I'm going to be doing a review for Fighters, and I might need somebody to
Well,
play that with. And my brother's already turned me down.
well, I'm definitely open to it because I am a fan of Arc System Works. They're the company behind Guilty Gear,
Yeah.
and they've elevated the faster paced fighting game to a higher level by leaps and bounds. So if you're needing someone with a perspective, I'm definitely open to that.
Yeah, I just want to get some multiplayer recordings too, and that's really all I'm trying to figure out.
Yep. Although speaking of fighting games, one announcement that did baffle me this week was the DLC announcement for Tekken 7, which is the inclusion of Noctis.
Noctis. That was weird.
I know. I looked at that. I'm just like,
who owns Tekken? Is it Namco?
yeah, it's Namco.
Why is Namco talking to Square Enix?
I don't know. I literally looked at that and I'm just like, what?
They haven't had good dealings in the past.
Well, I guess maybe they saw how well the Assassin's Creed tie-in worked, so they figured. Honestly, Noctis just feels so out of place for.
At that point, what's it advertising? Is it advertising 15 or is it advertising Dissidia?
Well, I guess it's mutually beneficial because, well, you've got episode Ignis coming out really soon for 15, and you have Dissidia coming out really soon. And it's mutually beneficial because Namco, it means, hey, we've got more DLC for Tekken. And honestly, looking at the way Noctis fights, it really makes me wish Namco didn't, screw themselves over with Soul Calibur 5. Because Noctis would fit perfectly in a Soul Calibur game, not a Tekken game.
Right.
But
I would actually like to see his kit in a Soul Calibur game.
Yeah, problem is that they ruined Soul Calibur beyond any possible salvation with Soul Calibur 5 and the free-to-play version they tried to market afterward.
Yeah, no. I can't touch it.
Yep.
Really quick before we get started, can people in the chat hear me? I'm getting kind of volume bumps on my window, but I'm not quite sure. I know these guys can hear me, but can you guys hear me okay? I gotta get rid of my mic. I'm sad too. I like this mic. Okay. And I guess while we're answering this, we've got Thanksgiving talk in the chat. What the heck?
Yeah.
Well, it is around that time. It is around that turkey time. So okay.
Although
so
that does raise the question. You have Thanksgiving, which is Turkey Day, and you have Taco Tuesday. Does that mean that the Tuesday after Thanksgiving would be Turkey Taco Tuesday?
All I know, Romney, is that you, even though she hasn't watched, you have convinced my sister-in-law that must be a thing.
Well, I mean, how else are we going to use the leftover turkey?
It's a good point. It really is. Okay, let's go ahead and get this show on the road then. So, yeah, we've got some stories to get into, but we also have a listener question and some discussions. So, you guys have lots to look forward to, and let me know when you guys are ready.
Sound speed.
Ready.
All right. Cameras are hot, or mics are hot on my end. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Oh, and to answer another quick question that I did get on Twitter earlier today, just to clarify, no, there will not be a Geek News group review of Justice League. We've already decided we're bypassing the Star Wars. At least That's our decision, right? Making sure.
I think so.
Yeah, I think that was the agreement. Yeah, we're gonna bypass the Star Wars guys. So at that point, I know that me and Alex will be doing a Justice League one, and heck, Romney's more than welcome to interject his opinions on that. But I have a feeling the superhero thing will hold.
Well, again, the embargo is mainly against the Marvel movies because they're critic-proof. DC, there's an actual discussion to be had.
Okay, that might be an interesting thing to do. I don't know. All right, let's go ahead and get things started then. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in Geek for Friday night, November 17th, 2017. We are on the eve of Turkey Day. I am your host, Adam Mickelson. I am very excited for Turkey Day when it comes along. I hope everybody's had an awesome week so far, especially with amazing game releases, amazing movie releases that everybody can look forward to. Some not so much as others. But we're here to discuss some of that already. So first of all, welcome all to the podcast. And of course, I'm being joined by my fellow panelists of fellow geeks, fellow YouTubers, fellow content creators, fellow awesome guys in general. And if you aren't following these guys, you should be. What the heck is wrong with you? And we're going to start things off with the Shadow Blazer himself, who has decided to grace us with his presence and come out of the shadows just before he needs to put on tons and tons of contact gear before Black Friday. Alex, how you doing?
Well, I did all right. The highlight of my week was the fact that, yay, this arrived for me. It's the Blu-ray DVD combo of A Silent Voice, straight from the UK, because, again, to my mystification, nobody over here has the license for Blu-ray release yet. I'm assuming someone's going to come along sooner or later, but I had to import it from
clearly it isn't Death Note, so there you go. There's no interest.
Apparently so. But yeah, excited to finally have this because it was a really good movie, and looking forward to watching it again in its entirety English dub. Because fun fact about the English dub is they actually did have a deaf actress for their deaf main character, so that's going to be interesting to watch.
Okay, and then we are also being joined by Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost, of From the Shelf, Romney's Reviews, Monster Clash, and now a Rhapsody in Cinema, the newest installment in his various series on his channel. Romney, how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty well. If people can see both in my little word thingy on the screen of the Hangout, as well as if you've been following me on Twitter, I'm still in the midst of NaNoWriMo, trying to hammer out 50,000 words in novel. Basically, the whole challenge of NaNoWriMo is to write a 50,000-word novel in a month. My word counts have been kind of sloppy this week, but again, juggling writing a novel with a 9-to-5 job. But, well, I'm still hanging in there, still pushing through, hoping to hammer it out by the 30th.
For the record, go ahead and put your word total, because I have been told by a few people that your stuff constantly comes in blurry. So give us a word count if just in case people can't see it.
All right, I have to pull up my social media feed here. So when I last posted my word count, I was at 23,753 words. Since writing today, I've broken past 24,000. I don't know the exact number. Goal by the end of tonight, after we're done with the show, is to get up to 26,000, so that way I can get back on track.
Very nice. All right. And yes, so with that, we also do have a few stories and discussions to go into. This is going to be kind of a light week, especially considering that just as a quick little bit of business, and I'll take care of this at the end of the podcast too, we will not be recording next week. And the main reason we will not be recording is, well, some of us don't really get the choice on whether or not that we're working on the holiday. And also some of us actually have family and friends that we want to, heaven forbid, spend time with. Not that we don't love you guys. We do. Especially you, Phil, off the audience. We love you, but you're not supplying us with an endless supply of turkey, and in some cases, and/or football. So at that point, we love you a little bit less. It's okay, Phil. You can walk away and you're fine. You can be proud of yourself. Be proud. But the way that it's going is, yeah, we're going to be taking that weekend off, obviously, because as usually is the tradition, Alex unfortunately works retail. He's going to be working. And, well, me and Romney have families that we need to attend to and all of that fun stuff. And why are you looking at me snarkily, Alex? I'm only stating the obvious.
It's true.
You might not walk in the next day.
I mean, the only benefit is I don't have to work the immediate Friday after Thanksgiving. I have to work Saturday morning though, which really, really sucks because it's really more annoying because they're forcing me to work exactly 6 hours, but in that case, I have to work exactly 6 hours. I get one 15-minute break. They're pretty much skirting the law to get as many hours, squeeze as many hours out of me without having to actually pay up and give me a proper lunch.
And see, part of me also wants to say lightweight because remember, I worked a 12-hour shift and got 10-minute breaks.
Yeah.
But you at least got a lunch, right?
No.
No?
No.
When they broke the law.
No, because if you didn't get a morning shift, basically the way that it worked, what I'm talking about is like I actually worked as a movie usher during the first Harry Potter movie. So that was pretty nasty. And the way that they set up our shifts was like you came in at this time, but they didn't know when they were going to let you go, kind of thing. And so at that point, I was in the afternoon. And so, yes, there was lunch served at 11. By the time I got there, which was 4, it was gone. And it had already been taken away. So yeah, 12 hours, 10-minute breaks. None of that. Do you want to know what I got for a bonus meal? Popcorn. Always with the popcorn. People wonder why I can't do movie theater popcorn anymore. That's partially why. There you go. So without further ado, well, Romney has a story first before that'll give me some prep time.
I don't really have a story per se. I was just going to chime in saying, well, I was going to add to Alex's thing where I'm like, that's how you know you're working retail, if they're trying to sidestep the law and basically rob you of your humanities in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, pretty much.
So let's go ahead and get into the first story that we have tonight is a little bit more of a discussion, and it's simply going to, the reason I made it a discussion instead of a story is, so for the last couple of weeks, we've been covering I'm going to call it Weinstein Gate for lack of a better term, because ever since Harvey Weinstein got busted, it's just basically a bunch of complaints now come crawling out of the woodwork. We've had Andy Signor happen. We've had, I can't remember who was the Nickelodeon one that we got. Was it Sorvino? Is that his name?
Yeah, Chris Sardino.
Chris Sardino. We had him. We've had Kevin Spacey in this amount of time. We also discussed last week that there was Charlie Sheen and Louis C.K. Ever since then, people have been so gracious to let us know that we didn't even cover the CEO of NeoGAF has some things against him. George Takei has things against him. Al Franken has things against him. And do you see the problem with trying to cover this thing now?
It's the Hydra. When you've cut one head, 2 more take its place.
Well, at that point, then I guess Weinstein is the Red Skull because it started at him. So at that point, the thing I want to point out is, yes, we're going to be talking about another sexual harassment story tonight, but this is going to be the last one because not only did listeners reach out to me, about new stories, but there were actually a couple of our more loyal listeners, who have asked me not to mention them, but have basically said that this is starting to feel like a loophole around the no politics rule. And I didn't see it that way when you brought it up, but I can kind of see why you look at it that way, because unfortunately this is also being brought up in mainstream events all the time. And so, and frankly, we don't like talking about it either, guys. I mean, with Kevin Spacey, we got at least a little bit of entertainment out of it, but I'm pretty sure that me and the rest of my panel, every time we see somebody else come out of the woodwork and have that accusation against them, our initial reaction is to pull a Captain Picard and just, oh. And then on top of that, we have the added reaction of, oh man, this could actually end up as a discussion on the podcast. Oh. So at that point, yeah, tonight's going to be the last one, and I'm going to bar any other sexual harassment stories being brought up, at least for right now, barring any major ones. Like if we have a major one that creates like a ton of controversy, like say Kevin Spacey in that level, then we'll probably bring it up again. But yeah, it's going to take that for us to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And the one in particular that we're going to be talking about tonight is one that you guys brought to our attention, which It's something that was being dealt with over the week, and it was actually hard to gather stuff for. But because I mean, really, the best thing that you were able to find on this story was the official announcement made by the website IGN. And yes, we're going to be getting into that sexual harassment deal involving Vincent Ingenito. I think that's how you say his name.
Yeah,
and
it's either Ingenito or Ingenito. I couldn't really tell.
yeah, it's one of those two. And I'm not even going to try and I tried so hard all week to try and say these women's names right, and I just can't do it, guys. But yeah, if you guys want to try and pronounce it, you're more than welcome to, but I keep murdering them according to people. So basically his two accusers. And the reason I picked this one out specifically is because I'm starting to see a little bit of a problem pattern happening here with all of these all of these accusers stepping forward. And so just give me a second to bring all of this up. So to kind of sum up the story that was happening, I want to say that this was happening over, I think it was was it a certain month period? I have to dig out the official statement from one of them to actually figure it out. But it was like a certain amount of months that one had basically been good friends with Ingenito, and unfortunately it got a little bit too personal in that regard, to the point where she basically got uncomfortable, and in turn, I want to say she reported him.
Yes, she reported him to IGN's Human Resources Department.
Yeah, so at that point, she reported him, and IGN did an investigation, did all of that stuff, and the way that it ended up was not the most ideal, because they basically kind of cited them both as responsible in this case, because she actually had to sign I don't want to call it a write-up, because it was more legal documentation also acknowledging that she was partially responsible for that, and she didn't agree with it, which, long story short, ended up in her, I think she's since left IGN at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And the only one I wasn't sure about is I think the second accuser was still there when this all happened. I'm not 100% on that.
Yeah, because in both articles, the second accuser does not have their identity revealed. The first accuser, by the name of Callie Plagg, I'm assuming is how it's pronounced, to give people.
I want to say Plagg, but no, I don't know.
But yeah, point being, Callie Plagg, who's currently I believe she's currently an editor over at GameSpot, talked about what happened when she was working at IGN, working with Vincent Ingenito, and the basic rundown. Now, the interesting thing here is that I have two articles that are telling both sides of the story. And so in Plague's account, she discusses the way Ingenito was inappropriate, and so she reported him to Human Resources, and, well, the way Human Resources handled it, did them both basically forced her to sign a document where she basically admitted fault and basically said, oh, don't entice him again or else you get fired. But I'll get into my thoughts onto how that was handled later. And then the second article, which comes from Otaku, the second article comes from One Angry Gamer, is with Vincent Ingenito telling his side of the story and how he perceived events. And, well, let's just say things are looking kind of unpleasant in the comments of both articles.
The comments are looking unpleasant, but it also, like, the more and more that I've read into this story, I don't know if you guys have gotten the same feel, but the more I've read into it, it just feels like more and more truckloads of gray got added on to this particular story. Because I'm not saying things got better, or I'm not saying things got better for either party. It just, in a lot of cases, it made me just sit there and question, okay, obviously there's parts of this equation, I'm going to be up in front with people. We don't have the entire story because there's one big piece missing: IGN's investigation. We don't have their results on the matter. We only know the result of their investigation, which was to pull both of them aside and write them both up, kind of thing. So we don't know necessarily what they discovered, who they talked to, or anything like that. And that's a big hole that we can't work with. And therefore, when you see additional statements made from Ingenito, one of the main reasons I put the One Angry Gamer one was to get some of his actual comments that he was making. And you start to have a little bit more gray brought into the situation, and it's concerning. Especially considering that a couple of weeks ago, I made it very clear that I was happy that investigations were happening and that they needed to happen. And this was, and one of the main reasons why is I'm not condoning sexual harassment. It's a horrible practice. And frankly, we all know better than this to have engage in these kinds of sexual relationships, especially in the workplace, especially in a workplace like this, where careers are basically on the line every time you write something. Okay. Your credibility, everything goes on the line when you write out a story. And so at that point, when accusations like this happen, there's no happy ending to either party in that regard, because it doesn't matter if the accusations are legitimate or if they're false, somebody's life is getting ruined. That's just the bottom line of it. And unfortunately, this is where I was worried that we were going to start having issues like this. I'm not saying that this is a boy cried wolf situation. It isn't. The statements that I've read feel enough to be that, yes, this is accurate. This happened. But I'm just saying that the internet, being in its infinite wisdom, has basically decided to, I think, way too early jump down Incognito's throat. Okay. And the main reason I say that is I actually tried to get this for some of the comments that I was actually able to track down, and there was one in particular I can't find. But it was basically when Incognito admitted that when he had gotten pulled aside from IGN about the accusations, so these kind of paint him out to be a little bit more of a predator than I think he is. And the main reason I think that is when I saw the comment about he gets pulled aside by IGN, told what this investigation is about, his first initial reaction was, what do you think normally? Like when it comes to predatory behavior, guys, what's the normal thing that you'd think would come up? You'd lawyer up. You'd shut up. This guy offered up his phone, offered up screenshots, and said, do with it what you will. You be the judge. Here's all of the damning evidence that there is. And that's why in a lot of cases, I don't want to, like, I'm kind of in the camp right now that no, this guy is not the predator that people are making him out to be. Because if he was, why would he hand all of the evidence of his crimes to his accusers? Granted, he might be forced to do it. If it's a company phone, he'd be forced to do it. But in this case, he did it more along the lines of, holy crap, exonerate me. Like, I didn't mean to do this. And in fact, his reactions later that in text that he had sent afterwards tell me that he in fact did feel sorry. He didn't mean to go, he didn't mean for anything like that to go that far. I get that occasionally people can play one face in front of one person and another face in front of others. But right now I'm going to take this guy at face value and say that, yeah, he genuinely feels bad about what he did. And he's coming out and saying that as such. So I'm not with the internet on this one. I don't want to ruin this guy's life. I think this was just a horribly innocent mistake that, unfortunately, in the way our society works, is going to get him lambasted and skewered. This guy won't have a career again, the way that people are talking.
Yeah, looking at this, I tried looking. I don't really see any one of the two people in this case to really level any umbrage towards. The only the only party in this that I would level umbrage against is IGN's Human Resources Department, because from the looks of it, they handled things fairly poorly. So much so, and the reason this got brought up was because earlier this week, a number of IGN employees basically walked off from their jobs, meaning that they couldn't upload an episode of the Daily Fix because a large group of the employees basically went on an unofficial strike because of how badly Human Resources handled this. And IGN did release a statement saying that the person who was in charge of Human Resources during this investigation is no longer with the company, so it very much speaks about what kind of person the Human Resources person at the time was, in the sense that they didn't actually do their job and do their due diligence. And so if there's anything I'm angry, any party in this that I'm angry at, it would have to be IGN's HR department. And at the very least, IGN seems to be admitting fault here.
Yeah, because they actually go on later in their statement to say that they actually are I don't know if it's in their official statement or if it was in the later one. They are actually hiring an outside company to come in and judge them. So at that point, I actually think that was the better thing for them to do, because I'm kind of in agreement with you, Romney. I don't necessarily want to fault either of the other two parties. The big glaring problem here is, how did their investigation led to them both being ultimately responsible and therefore having to be penalized for it? So at that point, I'm more interested in what's going to happen with IGN HR from there on in. But again, I have my legitimate concerns, because I don't see a reason to skewer this guy or put him up on his proverbial cross. I think this was innocent mistakes.
Yeah, and looking at this, that seems to be just the general case here, is that it very much, this is a textbook example of he said, she said. Yes. The real problem here was human resources dropped the ball. And sadly, it speaks to a larger problem with a lot of human resource people in a lot of companies in a lot of industries, where they don't take the complaints as seriously as they should, where they try to dismiss it. They try to give the accused the benefit of the doubt. Now, I understand we live in the United States. There is the presumption of innocence. But if someone is bringing you an allegation of sexual harassment or sexual assault, you need to take that investigation seriously.
Yes.
You don't want to go too far in sense of starting to escalate straight to firing people, but you need to do your due diligence to make sure that you can actually determine what actually happened and who is actually at fault. And from the looks of it, it looks like this HR rep, like, from what I'm seeing, from what they've described, it doesn't look like someone who's specifically malicious or misogynistic. It just looked like it was someone who didn't want to do their job.
Yeah. Or I'm more along the lines of where you're sitting at. They just didn't want to do their due diligence. They wanted to phone in a little bit. Because again, we can't judge this simply based off of, we don't know how the investigation went. But if you ended up where this is a sexual harassment case, and both parties literally feel like, no, that's not the way that this went, or one party feels like, no, that's totally what happened, and the other one is, no, I didn't mean it that way, and was willing to apologize and all of that. Penalizing the both doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In a lot of cases, like I look back on my previous employment history, my manager would probably pull, like, if I was involved in some way, something like that, I'm pretty sure my manager would pull me aside and say, look, this is the way that it should go, knock it off, kind of thing. And the next time that you do, one of you is getting the boot, kind of thing. And basically the one that initiates next would be the one getting the boot. So at that point, it really just feels like, yeah, this is probably the best solution overall. IGN just needs to get investigated, and whatever results come out of that, they come out of that, kind of thing. Alex, you've been kind of quiet on the matter. Where are you standing on the situation?
I don't have much to really don't have much to say on this, to be honest. With all these stories coming out of the woodwork, I've grown really numb to all of it. I can't bring myself to care much anymore, and it's more like I hate to be the guy who has the complete apathy, because I don't wish any problems on people. I don't want to see people harassed. I don't want to see people feel threatened in their jobs, and I certainly don't want to say, like, oh, I don't believe you. You must automatically be lying to be an attention seeker, right? You don't want to be that either.
You've been desensitized to it.
Yeah, I'm so desensitized to it at this point. It's like, you know what? I don't know. Let them deal with it. Let them figure it out. Let them, if it comes to it, let them have their days in court, or let the companies themselves decide and shape up. That's pretty much it. It's just more like it's more or less, I can't get outraged and I can't get sympathetic. I just have to read it, take the lessons that can be learned from it, so I can protect my own self in the future from something like this. This happens, but you never know. And move on.
Yeah, that's unfortunately the best case scenario here is ultimately, like, where Ingenito can still work, but he's learned from this unfortunate incident. I wish the best for also the two female accusers against Ingenito. I'm hoping that this is something that they can all get past and that IGN can go and fix. But this is also just another one of those concerns that I have, is With this kind of a situation, and I was just barely bringing it up in the pre-show too, I'll bring it up here, is once you start a snowball like this, it's like every cartoon you've ever seen. It gets big enough, you can't control it, and more importantly, you can't stop it. So at that point, this is just one of those words of caution that I would put out to people, is that while I don't ever want to make this claim, but it does happen, especially in cases like this, is that unfortunately when people are accused of sexual misconduct or murder or things like that, unfortunately other people will come out of the woodwork and aren't necessarily involved. Okay, they are crying wolf to an extent. And the reason they're crying wolf is because they're seeing all of the famousness that is happening with the other accusers, and they want to get on that action. We've seen this happen before numerous times in the past. I would dare say that the biggest example that people can bring to my attention would be the whole Bill Clinton deal, and where Lewinsky had to be the focus of that. Then we eventually had Flowers and Jones eventually brought into that equation. I'm not saying that they were crying wolf, but in essence, they came out simply because now it was not, or it was the cool thing to do, so to speak. And that's going to be a thing that happens here. We're already starting to see it with additional celebrities where more and more excusers are coming out. The one that shocked me this week, and I don't know, maybe it's just because I thought he was a decent guy, is George Takei. The accusations that happened around him, and it didn't necessarily help his case when I saw that he was basically blaming the Russians for the fact that it got all of the media attention that it did. And I don't agree with you, George. I think it's just simply because this is the outrage that people are having right now, and they found out you did something shitty. Pardon my French. So at that point, the other thing that I would also advise people on is, I know that we love these people, but we can't forget that they're people. Okay? They are just as imperfect as any one of us. And we have to keep that in mind. In the pre-show, Alex was bringing up a story between Mary Elizabeth McGlynn and Gene Simmons, where she tried to shake his hand, and, well, he pointed to his dick and said that's where the moneymaker is. Okay? And the unfortunate part of that is my first thought went, do I expect Gene Simmons to do anything less? No, because that's the expectation that's come to be with Gene Simmons. So at that point, maybe the thing to do here is not necessarily, we don't condone their actions. By all means, we don't do that. But we also probably shouldn't put them up on the pedestal that they're on for this stuff to happen, and then all of a sudden our viewpoint of them gets wrecked, so to speak. Maybe we ought to just acknowledge that they're men and women just like us that go through their own unique situations. That way, at that point, when this happens, we can kind of more acknowledge it and move on instead of being outraged and wanting to basically end their public life, so to speak. Romney, you kind of have that look of I'm preaching, so if I'm preaching, let me know.
Well, there's pretty much not much else to really say. It's that, yeah, these are people that are equally flawed, and they, by that same token, they should also be held accountable for their actions the same as any other person.
Yes.
Sometimes, yeah, it does mean their careers are ruined, but, well, they were people that made a choice, and they should be made to face the consequences of those choices.
Yeah.
That's how life should work.
Yes, let's take into consideration that with these accusers, we are basically saying, like, they've destroyed the life of another, and, you know, before we destroy their lives, let's make sure that they actually did this. And then on top of that, with these celebrities, let's take them down a peg. Okay, I'm saying that in the concept of they are men and women just like us, and maybe we shouldn't deify them and therefore kind of enable this weird behavior that we get from people like Gene Simmons. Because, I mean, as much as I hate to say it, guys, we are equally responsible for his actions just as much as he is. I'm not saying that he's not responsible or accountable. He totally is. But if we hadn't been treating him like a rock god for so long, could things have been different? Maybe he wouldn't see himself in this. Whoa. You guys all here? Holy crap. What happened?
Yeah. It skipped for a second, so
My PC. Holy crap! Okay, my PC had a conniption. Sorry about that, guys. We're moving on, but yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the matter. So, final thoughts before we move on.
not
After I
much.
get everything up and running again. What the heck was that? Okay.
There's not much else to say except that we can't keep covering this because it's just there's too much coming out now. It's like trying to measure a waterfall using a beaker. We just can't keep doing it. There's just too much water.
Well, and on top of that, it's just we also aren't willing. You guys aren't willing to listen to it, and so at that point, we can cover other things. And I get a lot of the listeners' justification, like this is becoming that political loophole. Yeah, it kind of is. So we can cover it when the big stuff happens, but we don't have to cover it all the time. The next story that we have tonight is also a controversial subject because we're talking about Alex's favorite game, Star Wars Battlefront 2 EA Edition. I don't know why I went all Shakespearean.
I prefer to call it Battlefront 4 because I hate this chronologically confusing bullshit that companies like to do with sequels and reboots and movie tie-ins and all sorts of stuff.
So you want to call it Battlefront Foe?
Or Foe, that works too.
Well, honestly, yeah. I'm just surprised. Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't just call it Star Wars Battlefield, tie it to their established shooter franchise.
Because I actually think there was talk a while back about like merging the two together. So like basically making Star Wars-esque maps in there, and then they decided to do the whole Battlefront thing.
Well, yeah, because honestly, at least that would have made it less confusing instead of confusing it with the good Battlefront games. They just could have called it Star Wars Battlefield. It's like, oh, well, it's our Battlefield series, but with a Star Wars skin. That at least markets itself. It basically makes it easier to tell what it is you're getting.
Yeah. So at that point, the next story that we're going to get into is involving Battlefront 2, but more specifically, so if you've been following this at all, we've had a problem with the microtransaction system. We've been talking about the Activision one. We haven't necessarily talked about the EA Battlefront one, which is basically a pay-to-win scheme. This is as clear and blatant a pay-to-win scheme as there ever is because in order to be able to get the necessary weapons and armor and whatever for progression, you were basically going to need to be buying loot boxes, which in turn would cost real life money because you'd have to buy crystals and blah, 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 blah. Everybody kind of knows that part. Moving on. People might also know that there's been huge backlash, especially when the beta and alpha candidates released. And in turn, that's when we discovered all this and that it wasn't going to get better or worse, or it was only going to get worse. So much so that EA actually had a massive amount of refunds happen. And I know a lot of those were beta accounts, but a lot of other people were following internet reviewers, maybe other celebrities that were making their opinions known about the matter. And they were in essence canceling their pre-order for it. So massive amount of refunds happening for Battlefront 2. Enough so that they eventually brought out some devs to discuss the issues on Reddit. That didn't end up so well for them, actually resulting in an actual Reddit record. The most disliked comment was an official statement from EA in this Battlefront 2 situation. And I think it's like at 800,000 strong now. 800,000 dislikes.
Wow.
That's a lot of people, EA. And so and granted, I mean, you could have dummy accounts and stuff like that, but that's still a lot of people. But eventually the war was fought, and for the moment, people would like to think that they've been heard. I have my own thoughts on the matter, but EA came out in a press statement that literally happened last night from the CEO of DICE. Let's see, do we actually have it? Yes, we are turning off. So according to DICE GM Oscar Gabrielson, we are turning off all in-game purchases. We will spend more time listening, adjusting, balancing, and tuning. This means that the option to purchase crystals in the game is now offline, and all progression will be earned through gameplay. This would probably be the point where we all go, hallelujah! Hallelujah! We won! We won! The gamers won the war! Before you pop the cork, I gotta be that guy. Romney's already given me that look. I gotta be that guy because I'm not saying that we've seen these actions from EA before. We've seen similar actions. And frankly, I don't think you've won anything. Yes, microtransactions are offline. That's not a permanent thing, though. And I'm pretty sure that we can all agree this is just EA biding its time, getting a lot of the hatred out of the way, and then reintroducing the system later on.
They even say it in the statement that they gave that they're going to add it back in later. It's not even like a secret. Yep. The GM of DICE said the ability to purchase crystals in-game will become available at a later date, only after we've made changes to the game.
Yes. So we already have that confirmation. This system is coming back, people. It's not out of the... Like, you haven't changed EA's mind. You haven't changed DICE's mind. This is happening. The only difference is that they are really concerned because of the loss or the massive amount of refunds. In fact, I don't remember where the story came from, but I found a story today which was basically saying how Battlefront 2 is going to strongly encourage you to sell your EA stock. And I believe that to be true because, as we all know, with a video game release date, the first week is crucial. That's when a lot of your sales are going to happen. That's where you can basically determine whether a game has been successful or not. It gets a little bit more dicey. Get what I mean there? Dicey. When it's a holiday release, because then you can kind of lump in the holiday months, but it's still kind of that first week that goes into play. And so that's really what's happening here. EA is worried about their release week and their window being affected by all of this. And so they're basically saying, okay, you win for now. We want to sell this game. And we'll bring it in at a later date. Probably next month. Probably next year. Who knows? They don't really say.
Probably just after the holidays, after a bunch of new little kitties get the game and they can nickel and dime them.
Yeah, pretty much. So at that point, as much as a lot of people would like to say that they've won the war, and I've actually been approached, I don't know if you guys have been on like Twitter and social media, saying like, is it okay to go ahead and buy Battlefront if the system's gone, then obviously the problem's solved? No. And that would be, so I'm already going to just come out here and say this because I've gotten numerous people asking. No, don't buy Battlefront 2. If you do not support this system in any way of its implementation, whether it's a week from now or a month from now, do not purchase this right now. Do not purchase it. Go check out some of the other games that maybe you've been interested in this year. Don't purchase this one. Not yet. If you want to purchase it down the line, purchase it like a month from now. Purchase it I would actually encourage you to wait till January. So then at that point, you miss the holiday window too. But if you want to send a message to EA that you're not cool with any of this, you got to vote with your dollar. And the way that you do that here is you don't buy the game. And you certainly don't buy any of the bonus stuff. Heck, if you can find this at a discounted price, do that. Kind of thing. Send that message to EA.
From GameStop.
What was that?
I used from GameStop.
Exactly. Because, I mean, like, I'll admit I'm actually going to be getting it because I've already promised a review on it, and also a try video where basically I punish the Shadow Blazer and make him play it. But even then, I'm waiting a month. They're not getting release window action from me. This is a bad enough system that I don't want to encourage, and here's the part where Alex gets to be happy is we might actually tackle this after the holidays. You can't tell, but Alex is smiling right now on the inside. And it's a big, big grin. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into you guys' opinions on this matter. Alex, we have to start with you. Obviously, is this a victory? Is this a victory for the gamer, or is this just EA biding time?
Well, I think this particular comment in the IGN article really sums it up quite perfectly. The microtransactions are easily startled, but they will soon be back, and in greater numbers.
I've loved a lot of the memes that have actually come out. This the other one that I actually saw was it's the scene where Luke and Obi-Wan are in Obi-Wan's hut. He's like, before the dark times, before the Empire, but it's spelled EAMPIRE, so EA Empire.
Right.
Yeah,
Because like Luke accidentally stumbles upon the original Battlefront 2. It's like,
Yeah.
yes, before the dark times, before the Empire.
yeah. Although I imagine in this scenario, the version of Obi-Wan we'd probably see would probably be Lord British.
You had to remind me of that. You had to go and remind me of that, didn't you?
Yep.
Or was that aimed at me because I can't do accents?
No.
Well, it's
Lord British was the CEO of Origin Games before they were bought, and Origin is popular for the Ultimate games.
Yep. And EA
Okay.
ruined Ultima 9. And so,
Of
yeah.
course,
Oh, they
'cause
ruined Ultimate 8
EA
too.
ruins everything.
Yep.
Yes, it's one of those times where I actually would pull out a Spoonie meme and go, and then Electronic Arts happened again. Bum 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 ba-dum bum ba-dum.
You know what? No. The EA is not deserving of John Williams' masterful score. The Imperial theme is too good for them.
I'm gonna disagree just because it's the best describer. I mean, we could go down the extreme route and give him the Emperor's theme. I don't even know if this is registering on the mic, but
Well, I'd say that would be more Disney, not really EA. Like, Disney gets the Emperor theme.
okay,
Yeah.
all right, yeah. Does that mean eventually we're gonna get an image of Mickey Mouse in a robe using Force lightning?
There's been several
It's bound to
images of
happen.
that already.
Have there
It's
been really?
happening.
I've never seen any of them. Oh my gosh! I actually okay. I'm having an ADD moment. I need to see this.
Yeah, like that was when Disney bought Lucasfilm. That was literally the first image anyone drew was Mickey as the Emperor.
Oh my gosh! Holy crap! They did. These are great.
Why does this surprise you?
I never saw any of these. That's why it surprises me. But yeah, so I mean, at that point, back on topic to the story. So obviously, this is good news, Alex. But are you in the camp of this is an immediate solution, or do you think EA is just going to pull this out of their butts a month from now?
I don't know what kind of quote unquote fine tuning EA is really gonna do. Maybe they will try to rebalance it out. I don't know, but obviously, yeah, this is because they're facing so much blowback from everybody about this.
Yeah,
I'm a little surprised, to be honest, that they caved because I figured, what difference does it make? The game's still gonna sell because one, it's Star Wars. Two, casual normies don't care about microtransactions because three, casual normies probably pay into microtransactions. The only people who are getting pissed off at this are the hardcores on the interwebs like you and I. So a little surprised EA caved, sure, but I'm not totally surprised that it's just a temporary turn off before they just go back and turn it on again.
I will tell you right here now, the thing that shocked me on the matter is that, I mean, granted, I kind of flow in certain circles online and stuff like that, but I actually never thought I'd come across legitimate supporters of this system and supporters of EA in this system until this week. So I actually do follow a couple of social media groups that are specifically gamers, local and within the States, that have been covering this. And we actually did see an outpouring of EA fanboys, probably 12-year-old fanboys, who are immediately just going, "Oh my gosh, you guys are just complaining. Oh, this is such a great system. I can't wait to pour endless amounts of money into this loot box system." And those people came out of the woodwork, and that was like my only shock this week. Was like, wow, you exist.
Well, there's a sucker born every day, right?
Well,
I thought the
technically
Sith
every
Rule
minute.
2 was still in effect.
Well, the rule of two is no longer canon. Remember that. Because that's true. That's Legends territory.
Damn it, Romney. And I had a good line there, and you ruined it. You ruined it.
Yep.
I mean, seriously, I thought the rule of 2 was still in effect. But no, yeah. So, Romney, your thoughts on this matter? I mean, obviously, this is something that isn't going to hold out.
Nope, and they've even admitted, yeah, we're going to implement it later. It's just, I look at this, and, well, as someone who has no intention of buying Battlefront 2, or really any EA game for that matter, it's very much one of the... I mean, to add on to the war analogy, gamers, you didn't win the war, this was only a battle. And this
Yes.
isn't really a war so much as it is, well, a war of attrition that will never end. Either the game company will go under, or you're going to eventually buy the game, because, well... It happens. You try to resist and boycott as long as you can, but then you still end up buying it. Used, digitally, physical. If you follow it long enough, even if you hate it, it's a weird mentality people have gone into with TV shows and other things that they love to complain about. They still keep giving money. I don't know why. It's very much, this stove burns me. I don't like the fact that this stove burns me. Move your hand, you idiot!
Or the occasional video you got sent on YouTube of like the guy who constantly hits his head on something. Yeah, that's exactly what this is, guys. This is not EA conceding. Like the best way to look at this is, guys, if you're the rebellion, yeah, you destroyed the Death Star, but remember, Empire Strikes Back happens after that.
Mm-hmm.
Because then at that point, the Empire is going to strike back at you, and you're going to have some Hoth moments.
Yep.
So
you're gonna get run out of the ice planet.
Yeah, I'll even admit, like I was seriously torn about whether or not to do this, and the only real reason that I ultimately decided to pick up Battlefront 2 was because enough people wanted reviews. And so at that point, that's the only real reason that I'm picking this game up, is because I love you guys. Huh?
You should have said no. Stand on your principles. But that's me.
I am standing on my principles. I waited a month, didn't I?
You're still buying it though. You're still giving them money in the end.
It for cheaper.
Yeah.
And I mean, the only thing that I'm bringing up here is, I'm obviously doing this stuff because I do have these principles, and I get that you guys want it, so I will give it to you. But I'm not looking at this and saying it's going to be the best thing ever. I can already tell you there are certain features that aren't going to be in this thing that I'm not interested in. I'm a little bit intrigued by the story mode, but not by much. And I'm certainly not interested in going to go unlock hero characters in multiplayer. I don't care, because I'm not going to play multiplayer. I might do the arcade mode with bots, but that's about it. And even then, that's not an optimistic way to look at it. So yeah, unfortunately, I hate to be the guy in the room, but if you were hoping that this would give you the justification to go buy it, look, if you just can't wait anymore, buy it. That's the way, but know what you're walking into. You are supporting EA in this regard. You're saying that you're basically saying I have no problem taking it in the butt by EA. I hate to put it that way, guys, but that's basically what you're saying to them, is I have no problem with them invading my personal space and getting all up in my face and spamming me endlessly to do this, that, and the other, because I bought their game overall. And but if you want to send that message, if you want to actually stand on principle, then don't buy it. Wait till it's super, super cheap on Steam, and then maybe go try it out. Because then at that point, that's going to be when EA has determined it's either a success or a failure. And determine whether or not Battlefront 3 is happening after that. I guess Battlefront 5 at this point.
No, or alternately another thing that would also happen, which I've seen happen, is that either it'll be cheaper or they'll release a brand spanking new edition that has all the DLC which is another thing game companies like to do, is, oh, you bought the game at launch and bought all the DLC? Here's this nice edition that has all the DLC in one package, just because.
Sorry, you cut out in the middle of that. So what were you saying?
I was saying that if you wait long enough, some games, they may even just come out with a version that has all the DLC bundled in with the initial purchase, like, Capcom.
Wow, you actually made the example for me because Resident Evil 7 Gold Edition.
Mhm.
So final thoughts. I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head here, guys. It's great and all that this is not happening, but it's not a permanent feature. It's more of a temporary one. Microtransactions will be back by the end of the year. I can guarantee you that. So at that point, it's just up to you. If you want to support this, then support it. If you don't, then know what that entails. So the next story that we actually want to get into is more of an update. People might remember a couple of weeks ago, we discussed GameStop opening up what they called the Power Pass service, which is basically for an extra $60. I think it's every 60. I believe we said it was every month, but it actually turned out to be every 6 months that you would pay. You would be basically a super elite customer at GameStop and be able to rent used games within the store. And a lot of people actually looked at this at the services and went, wow, that's actually really cool. I actually know a few friends that went into the system or went into the service and wanted to try it. Except you weren't there very long because, well, it's been suspended. It's been suspended, and I'm going to quote GameStop here because, take of this what you will. We have elected to temporarily pause the rollout of the new Power Pass subscription service based on a few program limitations we have identified. We feel this is the right thing to do for now to ensure we are able to provide our guests an exceptional service. So what you're basically saying is you may have done some homework, but you didn't do all of it. And now you're starting to see problems, and therefore you've cut off the service. It's almost like you should have done all your homework.
Mhm.
Especially with all those rental systems out there. Now, I will say this at least in GameStop's favor. They have actually said that in response to this, any person who bought into the Power Pass system, I mean, if it comes back, they can go back into it. But the people who have bought into the Power Pass system, they will be allowed a refund. And they will be allowed to, as a sign of good faith, be able to take a used game in that regard too. So not only will you get your $60 refund, you will also get a used game in the process. Okay. So that's actually not too bad considering it's GameStop we're talking about here. They could have easily just said, no, we'll just refund you. And that's the way it's going to go. And if we bring the system back, you can go into it, all of that. I found it especially interesting that they added in the whole, you can take a used game. And I've already seen speculation on the internet basically saying, well, they're just looking to empty their stores because they're already got a store space. Okay, you might be right, but honestly, I don't see a whole lot, like when we're talking about individual stores here, I don't see a whole lot of people just within that store having the Power Pass system to justify that extra loss in storage space, if that makes sense. I honestly think per store, you're going to get maybe just ideal, like suburban environment, maybe 40 to 50 customers out of the possible hundreds that you deal with. So it's not necessarily accurate to say that this is going to get all of that excess crap out of their stores. I think it's just simply that they thought they had a good idea on them or from the beginning and then realized that there were problems. And as a good faith effort to maybe encourage people to come back and try the system when they've refined it, here's a used game. Have fun with it, kind of thing. So I guess let's just go ahead and get into you guys' thoughts before I give my opinion on the matter. Romney, your thoughts on the Power Pass system. I can't remember. Did you actually say if you were going to buy into it?
Well, I said that I was interested because I did like the idea behind it instead of, getting into the cycle of, buying a game, selling it back to get credit to buy another game. The whole, okay, just pay a service and just get a used game. Don't like it, trade it out for another one. I was generally in favor of it. And there was a comment in the original article that reported this that brought up an interesting point that is probably the real reason that they stopped the service, and that was because their computers simply couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
From what I've heard from a lot of
from what I understand, their system's still pretty archaic at this point. And probably the better thing to do would be to improve the system first and then implement this system.
Yeah, and so that seems to be the major thing. And keep in mind, this wasn't like a nationwide launch. This was a soft launch. They were testing it in specific areas to see if it was viable. And, well, yeah, it did what a soft launch is supposed to do. It made them aware of the potential problems so that way they can fix it before bringing out the program on a national scale. And so the fact that they're letting those who did buy into it get their money back and get the used game, it shows, okay, they're willing to at least make sure that they're not burning any bridges,
Yeah.
Because this is GameStop we're talking about.
Well,
and
like
so
with any,
at least
with any
there
business, you want to ensure some kind of loyalty.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, good on GameStop for at least, not being a dick to their customers, at least with those who bought into this. It very much, the soft launch did exactly what it was supposed to. It tested to see if there was a ban, which it proved there was. Hey, here are the potential problems with this idea. And so hopefully this will at least incentivize them to get some better computers.
Yeah, it's actually been kind of surprising to me that I haven't, like, at one point I'd actually seen what the GameStop system looked like, and it was very basic, like DOS kind of level crap, like when it comes to actually running it. So I don't know if that's currently what they're running off of, but if it is, that's pretty damn archaic. And so trying to run a new service like this off of that, I just don't see it working. I see there being endless amounts of problems with it. So maybe it was a better idea to take this thing off the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
And at least maybe look at the problems that you have within your own infrastructure before you implement a system like this that is going to really change the equation at your local GameStops. Alex, where are you standing on this one? Was this a good idea from GameStop or a bad idea?
Yeah, it's a good idea to, suspend the program until you have all the kinks worked out. Probably something you should have. Well, I guess hindsight's always 2020, so it's ideal to say you should have had everything worked out to begin with, but it's hard to predict everything. I don't know all the details, and obviously, if it's something with their computers, then clearly they might have overestimated. But I guess the good thing is they didn't bite off more than they can chew here, considering it was a soft launch and very limited markets. It could have been a lot more catastrophic if they tried to do this instant nationwide launch. So give it time. I think it'll be back.
Yeah, I honestly think, like, if I were to put a number to it, I don't think this is going to be back next year. I think maybe it'll show back up again, maybe like in 2019, 2020, because with stuff like this, like let's just say for the sake of argument that it is the computer system. That's going to take a nationwide effort to update the GameStop computer system and then re-implement it to all of the locations, especially the ones that are going to be running Power Pass initially. That's going to take time. And frankly, like full United States mobilization on it, it wouldn't be a year. It'd be more like 3. Just to be able to get every location out there. Because, I mean, you were kind of right, Romney. They're going to test it out in certain locations, which are probably going to be like the more popular cities. Those are going to be the ones that get affected first. But in our case, like where we're living, we would probably get it somewhere in like the second year. So it would start getting implemented here where they've had a solid year to work on it in the other cities. They know kind of the bugs and kinks to work out. So that's really where I'm thinking it's going to stand. And I don't think it was a bad idea the way that they handled it. I think that actually will ensure customer loyalty in this regard. I didn't buy into it. I was intrigued. This furthers my intrigue, is that they actually took that extra step and not just refunded the customer, but then gave you a used game in response to that, saying, we know that you were looking forward to this. Here's what you can do in the meantime. You can play this game and hopefully you enjoy that. And that'll buy you enough time so that we can fix this problem. So I think overall, this was probably a good step in GameStop's I'm going to say it's a good step in GameStop's record. Here's hoping that you guys get it in 2018, but I think it's more than likely this will resurface in 2019. So with that, let's go ahead and move on into the next story, because I really don't see any other additional stuff that we can add to this. And now we can officially step into the silly, because even though this is really kind of a disturbing story, I couldn't help but giggle. as I obviously put in the agenda. I'm just going to read the headline because I can't think of a better way to introduce it than this. To fight revenge porn, Facebook is asking to see your nudes. What? So the social network is testing a new tool in Australia. This is specifically in Australia, not in the US. And it's at stopping non-consensual images from spreading ahead of time. What they're basically trying to do is they're trying to test a new tool that will basically teach the Facebook system what is an inappropriate image. So then at that point, if that starts getting spread around, Facebook's system will then kind of content ID it and say, yeah, you're not supposed to have this kind of thing. It's supposed to lock it all down. Because if they're getting nudes off of your Facebook to go put up somewhere else, then that's a problem. And in order to test it, well, they actually needed to teach the system, so to speak. And the way that you teach it is you put up nude pictures. So they were actually encouraging Australian customers on Facebook to put up nudes of themselves in order to teach the system. You heard me right, guys. Even you, fill in the back. You heard me right. Facebook asked for your nudes to teach a computer system what a nude human being looks like and why that's inappropriate. Is it just me, or is somebody else thinking like somewhere off in a remote corner there is Mark Zuckerberg getting his jollies off at that point?
Well, the thing I figured, given, how frequently websites that hosted such images were often bombarded with various hack attacks leading to those images being leaked, I'm just like, are you just painting the bullseye on your butt right there, Zuckerberg? You're literally asking for hackers to go to you to try to bombard your website.
Why did you have to say on the butt, man? Why'd you have to go there?
Because nudes, that's why.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just...
I'm not saying it's wrong.
Yeah, it's
wrong.
It's just looking at it. Now, here's how the system works, at least as outlined in the motherboard article we're referring to.
Yeah.
You upload the image to Facebook Messenger, usually a conversation with yourself, and then you flag it as a, and this is in quotes, non-consensual intimate image. And then basically, Facebook builds a reference file based on that image, and basically uses that reference file to scan other posts to see if anyone else is sharing said image.
I've got a better idea, and I don't know why this isn't being considered. How about don't put your nudes up at all? How about don't take nudes of yourself with your iPhone? Have we learned nothing from people like Anthony Weiner?
Yeah. I mean, looking at this, it looks like they're trying to expand the algorithm they use to recognize people's faces and tags, but, using it for other parts of the body. But, again, it just raises the question of who the hell is going to use Facebook Messenger to send nudes? That is literally asking for trouble.
Well, but the thing that I would actually point out is, look, if you're doing that, you're kind of asking for that trouble. And not in a good way, everybody. You're asking for that trouble to come and find you. Why on earth do you need to put that stuff up, especially on some place where, I don't know, your potential employers, your potential clients, your new friends can find it? Why?
Yep. Now, let's kind of clear up another thing. This is being tested in Australia. Australia has a different legal system. Granted, it's kind of similar to Britain's, but simply put, they have different laws, which is probably why Facebook is testing the waters there, since their laws regarding objectionable content can be seen as arguably draconian. So that's probably why Australia agreed to allow Facebook to run such a test. So it's one of those cases of, will enough people buy into it? Who knows? I don't control Australians.
Again, I'm sticking to my point here. People of Australia, don't send your nudes around. Don't.
People of America don't
take
send your
them.
nudes around.
What was that?
People of the world, don't send your nudes around.
Yes,
there's
please
the
don't. Okay, guys, I'm not saying that everybody looks absolutely ugly nude, okay? But frankly, we don't need them.
Unless you're a professional model and that is your job, and well,
But
I
even
don't know
then, you
whatever.
have a separate portfolio for that.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know,
You're not putting
you
that
really
up
want
where younger girls and boys can idolize you. You're not putting that up there.
you know you really want to if that's how you get your kicks, great. Then Polaroid and snail mail that rather than put it up where everybody in the world can find it, access it, and post it all over the web to share.
Yeah. Sad thing is, though, that that's not going to stop people, because there's a reason eBay dicks are a thing.
No, and here's the thing. You're entirely right. But at the same time, people, I get it. In marital relationships, you send those occasional racy pics. But I don't know how many times I've had to have this conversation with friends, families of younger boys and girls, and had to say this. What you put on the internet, it's not like it's Vegas. It doesn't just stay in Vegas. It stays there permanently. Even if you delete it, somebody with enough knowledge can reassemble it.
Mm-hmm.
And your nudes are there permanently. Why on earth would you take such a reckless action? And the sad part is, kids do this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the sad reality of that is that unfortunately, as much as we hate those undesirable sites, you're fueling them because those are the people that can recreate the images.
Mm-hmm. You'd be surprised the kind of things you can find on the deep web, where there are websites dedicated to collecting the types of things that people don't want spread around. There are people that troll the internet for those types of images. So, yeah, it's not smart.
So here's an idea. Let's make this system not needed at all and just not send our nudes around.
Yep. Again, as Alex put it, Polaroids and snail mail if you really must, because at the very least, if those images go up, you know whose ass to kick.
Or even better, just hand them to the people. Okay? You don't even need to send them through the postal service because do you really trust snail mail? Do you guys trust your local post office? I don't trust my local post office.
Well, to be fair, opening mail that isn't addressed to you is a federal crime, so it's probably a bit safer than, cyberspace.
I still believe that there are mail carriers who don't care. They'll do it just because they can.
It's still prosecutable.
It's still prosecutable, but they'll still do it. So at that point, like, if you must absolutely hand this over to your boyfriend to be,
but it's like
just hand it to him.
But it's like Romney said, if it happens, and you did send it to the snail mail, in that case it happens, well, like Romney said, you know whose ass to go kick.
This is true, but again, don't send your nudes around. This is my default position here. I get that people are in relationships or whatnot, but the problem is that what happens if that relationship ends? Well, that dude just has your nude. And he could put it up wherever he wants.
Yep. But
Is
again,
that a good decision? Probably not.
But again, that's the benefit of going with the Polaroids and SAML thing, because it makes it much easier to track. Whereas digitally, you don't know who could have pulled the images. You don't know if some hacker in Zimbabwe was able to pull it from the website, or if it was your coworker. Whereas if you took a Polaroid, which prints out a physical picture, and you know who you gave it to, and you know who had it, you know who to send the cops after.
I'm not saying that I disagree with you. I'm just saying don't send us.
Yes, you're saying them, but people do. People are going to do it. That's the end. That's the point of it. People are going to do.
Don't send them to Mark Zuckerberg, because we don't know what he's going to do with them.
We don't know what other Facebook employees are going to do with them.
But this is the thing. Like, we could be totally making fun of this right now. Like, the fact that Zuckerberg could be, just in a remote room and, getting his jollies off to a bunch of dudes. He's like, yeah, they bought it. I'm not even building this system. They bought it.
Yeah, who knows? Well, maybe this is just a weird bet between two Facebook employees that Zuckerberg just decided to go along with. That they're thinking, okay, we're going to totally pitch this weird idea to Zuckerberg, and if he goes with it, you owe me a Coke. And then Zuckerberg went with it. So somebody probably won a bet.
I'm sure somebody's going to make this joke, so I'm just going to go ahead and make it now. And this just in, new accusers of sexual harassment and sexual misconduct for Mark Zuckerberg. Add him to the list. All right. So yeah, this is a silly story, and I mean we could bounce this back and forth. The other thing too that I don't think the story actually articulates this very well. Could somebody please articulate revenge porn to me?
All right. Here's basically
how Romney can actually do this.
Yes, because I've done my fair share of research on this topic. Not in the ways people think, but back when there was the big celebrity nude photo scandal, a lot of people delved in and discussed the legalities of it. But basically, say I was dating a woman and I had given her some images, and then we had a very nasty, violent breakup. As revenge, to upload the images I gave her to the internet for the purpose of saying, hey, here's this person, giving the name, and basically revealing everything that I would be showing to the world. And that is basically what revenge porn is in a nutshell. That is basically those nudes that were sent privately being shared publicly as a form of revenge.
And this educational moment has been brought to you by Stephen Romney.
Again, I read a lot of articles about the legality of it because, again, I contemplated becoming a lawyer. So, well, you have to understand. Yeah, that's how I know this thing.
I don't know why I didn't think of this, but yeah, you would have an answer for it because you'd have to go into the legality of it. And yes, there would actually be I was actually half joking. I'm like, part of me wants to just sit there and go, okay, you're going to revenge. So somebody put out porn and now you're going to revenge porn them with more porn.
It has happened.
That's how the internet came to be, isn't it?
Well, it has happened where you had people who are adult, who work in the adult industry, and it's a thing that does happen. It is a sad reality where, yes, if someone who professionally produces those images has a boyfriend or girlfriend that they had a bad breakup with, it's something that has happened. And I wasn't kidding. There are websites on the deep web that are dedicated to this sort of thing, and it's messed up.
Messed up is one word. One of many that we could use to describe this entire story, but I think it's best that we move on because then I already feel like the comment section alone is something to be worried about with this story. So moving into the next one, this one is not surprising at all. In fact, this is just more of a confirmation than anything else. So we've covered the various cinematic universes that want to be picked up in the future. Obviously, there's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We've now confirmed that there is no DC Cinematic Universe, but this one was definitely in the works, and that was I actually like how they put it, the Universal Monsterverse. So people might remember that somebody in Universal wanted to actually do an entire universe based off of the Hammer horror-esque franchise that they have. So they were going to start things off with Dracula Untold, which bombed horribly. And then it was supposed to be carried on, but then they kind of put their hopes into the new Tom Cruise Mummy, which also bombed. And now it's pretty much all but considered certain that the Monsterverse is nothing resembling a reality, as we already have Alex Kurtzman and Chris Morgan departing after the failure of the Tom Cruise Mummy. And I believe these were the guys that were like kind of pitching the idea of being able to do what is being called the Universal Dark Universe.
Yes, basically these two were hired by Universal to basically be the Kevin Feige of the Dark Universe, but as reported by the Hollywood Reporter, they have since departed, and the offices that Universal went to great lengths to build and even give the gothic interiors now sit empty.
Yes. In fact, they actually go into a little bit more detail of like ever since Kurtzman and Morgan have left. I mean, they actually had pre-production going on a Bride of Frankenstein movie, which was supposed to follow the new Mummy. That because of the production or the producers leaving, it's had its plug pulled, so to speak. So it's looking very certain that this is not happening at all. So there will not be a Universal Monsterverse.
Well, actually, the article says otherwise. It's not that it's not going to happen. It's more that Universal is going back to the drawing board. And some people have mentioned that one thing they're considering is, instead of trying in a cinematic universe, simply having filmmakers remake these classic movies. One producer that has voiced an interest has been Jason Blum, and simply, rather than trying to create an elaborate cinematic universe, simply just remaking these movies.
But even then, they correct me if I'm wrong, but they're not connected. They're just reimaginings.
That's the idea. Yeah, just reimaginings that are separate from one another, which honestly, I think would work best, given some titles can actually blend together. So Dracula, you can kind of tie with the Wolfman, you can kind of tie with Frankenstein, but things like Phantom of the Opera and The Hunchback of Notre Dame, there is no way you can make those fit in a cohesive universe and have them exist on the same plane, because those two specifically are very much tied to the period in which they are set. Hunchback of Notre Dame especially is tied to the time in which the story is told, when the church had a lot of power. And so it's a case of having just remaking these movies but not trying to tie them into one large elaborate universe, with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde being the Nick Fury, which was also a really, really stupid idea. It's just one of those. Universal is gonna go back to the drawing board because they still have something with their monster movies that is an established IP that they want to use, but it's clear that this dark universe is not going to be how they use it.
Yeah, I mean, we still have maybe some other films that are going to be made, but they're going to be more reimaginings. They even talk about a photo that shows up later on in the article, which showcases Johnny Depp, Russell Crowe, and who's the other one? Javier Bardem. As basically trying to do, instead of connected films, more reimaginings of the movies that they were probably going to be brought in on.
Yep. Actually, that image was back when they first announced the Dark Universe, back when they were going with that plan. There is a statement, though, from Universal Production President of Production, Peter Kramer, that kind of confirms, where he says, "We have learned many lessons throughout the creative process on Dark Universe so far, and we're viewing these titles as filmmaker-driven vehicles, each with their own distinct vision. We're not rushing to meet a release date, and we'll move forward with these films when we feel they are the best versions of themselves." Honestly speaking, they had a film in the past that was the best possible jumping off point for a dark universe. It's called Van Helsing. Bring Steven Sohmer back. He actually understood how to combine them all and make it work. Because Van Helsing is pretty much what the dark universe wants to be, except it's all in one movie.
Yeah, and then at that point, I mean, that actually gives a jumping off point of, like, I'm just saying theoretically, in the first Van Helsing movie, you were dealing with the classic ones, Dracula, the Wolfman, Frankenstein. Then you could go into other things in a Van Helsing sequel and in other sequels. But there's also a lot of internet chatter on this one as to whether or not, because of the fact Dracula Untold and The Mummy have been unsuccessful. They correct me if I'm wrong, Romney. They've both been determined as bombs.
Yep.
So at that point, there's a lot of skepticism going around that even if they do this shift in direction, that it's still not going to save it, because the bottom line is this is just a bad idea. It's not necessarily working out. And it's hard to not argue. It's hard not to argue in that favor when you've already had two movies fail. But here's where I would disagree on that matter. They were literally engineered to work together, to connect to one another, and were built to build up this dark universe, not necessarily to showcase Dracula or to showcase the Mummy. They were built also with this other subtle thing in mind. So at that point, I don't know if you can necessarily make that claim. I understand where people are coming from on that. But if they actually were able to shift their focus and do a legitimate, retelling of Frankenstein, I don't know if necessarily you'd get the same product out of it that they were trying to do that, instead of having like the Dark Universe having Frankenstein connect to everything else.
Yeah, and honestly, looking at this, the big problem is that they made the same mistake DC made, where they were trying to rush to the Avengers too quickly. Whereas the best way to do a Dark Universe, if they want to establish this elaborate organization that fights monsters, you can't just rush and basically do a plot dump in the middle of one of the movies to explain this. You have to build it up slowly. I mean, a good way to build it up, you defeated the mummy, and then you have the remains stored. Instead of, it's this elaborate facility, just have it be like the warehouse at the end of every Indiana Jones film where the artifacts get stored. Have that be the case of, we see this mysteriously, these remains or these various artifacts tied to these monsters we just defeated keep getting pulled and put away in this mysterious location, and then have the big Avengers tie-in be, okay, we finally learned what this mysterious location is.
And
but
that's the
they
other
didn't want to.
That's the other thing that I don't think. I think this is the biggest indicator of not a whole lot of thought was put into this Dark Universe, because even I kind of look at it and go, what was the end game? Like, okay, you did a Dracula movie. You did a mummy movie. You did a Creature from the Black Lagoon movie. They're getting together to do what exactly? Save the day? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially if they're the enemy.
Yeah, and I mean, one person...
Not a whole lot of thought was put into this thing from my perspective.
Nope, it was very much, we want to basically create the yearly money-making machine that Disney has, but without putting much thought into telling a cohesive story. I mean, honestly, there are so many much better templates. I mean, a lot of people think, mysterious organization that fights monsters and things that go bump in the night. Yeah, it already exists. It's called Hellboy.
Yeah, Hellboy, I mean, it doesn't exist anymore, but League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Van Helsing,
Constantine, you've got, basically, it's been done to death.
Exactly. Or, I mean, all it would take is for this thing to compete with, say, I don't know, Justice League Dark, and people would go, okay, well, there's at least an idea there compared to what this is supposed to be going. We don't even understand where the hell it's going.
Yeah, point being, it's very much telling that Kurtzman and Morgan decided to depart because they realized, this is a sinking ship, and hopefully, because I do like the idea of creating kind of a shared universe of all these monsters, but you have to actually think through what story you're trying to tell with this. I mean, Dracula Untold gave a much better jumping off point than The Mummy, because during the post-story scene for Dracula Untold, because in Dracula Untold, he was turned into a vampire by Caligula. And then literally the movie ends with Dracula and Caligula in modern day, Dracula kind of living a life with a moderately happy life, meeting Mina, and then you literally see Caligula watching in the distance saying, let the games begin. I'm just like, hey, there's your villain, and there's your main focus character. You have Dracula be the focus, you have Caligula being the overarching villain, and having that interplay between those characters can be what guides the universe. But because Dracula Untold bombed, they threw all of that away.
Yeah, pretty much. Alex, you've been kind of quiet on this one. Do you think do you think overall this was a good idea to just scrap this universe? And what are your thoughts on changing the focus here and doing instead reimaginings of the classic movies?
Yeah, I'd say just dumping the whole universe idea is dumb. I mean, come on. The moment I heard of the whole Dark Universe, I sighed and rolled my eyes because I'm like, oh, look, another company really hollow and shamelessly trying to cash in on Marvel's success because Marvel's had all this luck. Well, they tend to forget that to Marvel's advantage, they've had, many decades of comics before it, and, a lot of luck in the movie department.
Yeah.
And even then, Marvel had its stumblings out the gate. I mean, they had Hulk and, I don't know, I can't remember what else they had in the...
Incredible Hulk would have been a step in the wrong direction. I would argue that Iron Man 2 was a step in the wrong direction and had to be corrected by Thor and Captain America.
Yeah, and even then they've had missteps with Thor: The Dark World as well.
Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, anyway, so yeah, I mean, even Marvel has had its stumbles out the gate. So Universal, and it was obviously a very shallow attempt to just try cashing on Marvel, but with no cohesive understanding of how Marvel's been able to pull it all together and make it work for better and for worse. And in that sense, another aspect is they again trying too hard to copy Marvel. To DC's credit, at least with DC, well, racing towards the Justice League a little too hard, at least DC's been trying to pull into the other direction and push in the other direction by, well,
Yeah, to try to
essentially
fix it.
working. Besides just trying to fix it, essentially just trying to, well, work backwards from Marvel's formula by starting off with the big team up movie of Batman v Superman, jumping to Justice League. And of course, we can criticize DC's been rushing it too fast, but you can also kind of compliment them for going backwards from Marvel rather than just trying to slowly copy Marvel's formula. Universal, again, trying too hard to copy Marvel by making The Mummy a big spectacle action movie rather than maybe a bit more of a modest budget horror movie. This is something YouTuber George Rockwell Smith had commented on when he made his commentary about why the essentially industry commentary about why The Mummy failed, and a big part of that, a big part of the reasoning he focused on was the budget was just too expensive. That movie was just too expensive and had way too much to lose. Universal needs to cut their budgets down significantly and make them a lot more modest and not reach for these pie in the sky dreams. You want to do the big team up? Fine. Save your money for the big team up movie.
Yep.
Just cut the fluff, cut it down. We already this year we've seen a lot of modest budget movies strike box office gold. You can do the same, Universal, with a little initiative.
Well, and you could dare say like the just given the formula that you just tried to describe, that's kind of how Marvel started. Is they were smaller budget films that had to be successful in order to build up to the next one. Because I'm pretty sure at that point, if they'd explained it to Disney, yeah, sure, Disney would have bought into, like, would have thought it would have been a great idea, but they would also have played it safe and said, well, but that's a lot of money that you're wanting us to invest right off the bat. You need to prove that first. And they did stumble and fall. Like we mentioned, the Incredible Hulk with Ed Norton is considered a stumbling. I consider Iron Man 2 to be a stumbling, and it took Thor and Captain America to basically build up again to an Avengers budget. And even then, I think the original Avengers still had limits on the budget because Disney wasn't entirely sold on it being a success and wanted to hedge their bets. It was only when Avengers was successful and it boomed that now we have these big budget Marvel films. Kind of thing. So at that point, I mean, the problem that I see that Warner Brothers, because they're connected to both of these, because Universal, I was actually going to say Warner Brothers is connected to another cinematic universe that we haven't heard anything about in a while, the Hanna-Barbera one. They haven't canceled it yet.
There's been, but so far there's been no movement. They're kind of doing a test run in the DC comics currently, is most we've seen from it.
Yeah, pretty much. They're trying to see if there's actual interest for something like that on the big screen. And they're redoubling their efforts on things like the reboot of the Harry Potter universe with Fantastic Beasts and a couple of other things like that. So I would actually dare say, yeah, they tried to copy that formula, but ever since then, DC has hit the brakes and actually decided, okay, we do need to build this up like Marvel did. And therefore do smaller budget films like Wonder Woman. I even think Justice League is building itself to be a smaller budget film than Avengers, just in case it isn't as successful. So at that point, they already have enough to build up to and have a lot more to prove. The Dark Universe just, it wasn't going to work. I don't even know where they were going direction wise. Because again, my biggest problem is, okay, so what happens if they all team up? They all enslave the world? I don't see where there's an end game.
Honestly, the way the way the plot would probably go would be, oh, there's an even bigger monster that they have to basically unite all the monsters to defeat because, that's how those things always go. It's literally monsters versus aliens would be how it would be. It's like, oh, it's an alien.
Yeah.
We have to get all these monsters to fight this alien.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is that we would get a Suicide Squad, roughly. And we saw how well that worked out.
Well,
Yeah,
to be
awesome.
fair, with Suicide Squad, that was the case of DC rushing it. If Universal had gotten their way and did all these other films first, we at least would have had other movies with these monsters. But again, it raises the point of, what reason would they have to team up with one another? I mean...
This would basically just be a monumental who would win against who kind of thing. That's the only way that I could see this working out and being successful. But I don't think it'd be very successful because, correct me if I'm wrong, AVP and Freddy versus Jason haven't been the most successful things either.
Nope. I mean, the closest that I could see of it working is if they built up all these very serious horror movies, and then the team up, instead of it being a team up movie, was just a remake of Mad Monster Party as a complete comedy farce.
Yeah. And for those who were confused, AVP was Alien versus Predator.
Yeah. To answer your question, Freddy versus Jason, success, 114.9 million against a 30 million budget.
Yeah.
Let's see how AVP actually did.
I know the first one didn't do well.
Well, it did marginally well, just not like super successfully. It was very much a case
where it wasn't considered standout. It was considered average.
172.5 million against 60 million budget.
Fun.
Okay, so it doubled its budget.
So yeah. Well, to be fair, that's how much it probably made at the box office, but theaters pretty much get most of that cut, so we don't know how much the studio got. Although, fun fact, those two films, same director, Paul W.S. Anderson. The schmuck who gave us the Resident Evil movies.
This is true. This is true. All right. And so that's pretty much where we can end that there. If there are any other additional details, obviously we'll cover them, but I have a feeling the reimagining route is where they'll go with it. And if they do something along the lines of a team up, I honestly think it would be like what you were saying, Romney, to be like a Van Helsing kind of thing, like fighting them off.
Yep.
Kind of deal.
Yeah, either a character like Van Helsing fighting them all off, or the monsters uniting against an even larger threat. I mean, honestly, I look at this and I'm just like, yeah, this is basically the premise of the first Darkstalkers game, because that's literally the premise. An alien comes to Earth, wants to conquer the Earth. All these other monsters are just like, hey, no, Earth is ours. We're not going to let you conquer it. We want to conquer it. And thus they fight.
Yeah. Although I just barely got a private message on the matter saying that Wolfman and Dracula versus the Xenomorph would be pretty awesome. So
yeah, well, then again, I mean, if they can make it work with Batman, but... yeah, because I mean, there is an interesting story to tell there, because when you have vampires and werewolves that attack by shedding blood, well, the blood's acidic, meaning okay, they'd have to get kind of creative in figuring out how to destroy the Xenomorphs.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd want to watch it in like a silly popcorn movie sort of way, but there's no way to make that and have it be a serious story. There's just you can't. Which,
by your own description, is what AVP was. It was basically like a what if film. So let's go ahead and go into the listener question that we have to kind of wrap up the evening, and it's actually really appropriate considering that next week will be Thanksgiving. So at that point, the listener question is, despite all of the negative stuff that's been happening this year, and we've reported on a good deal of it, with whether it be YouTube, whether it be this whole sexual harassment thing, we've reported on a lot of it. What is one thing in your life or your channel or podcast that you are thankful for this year? And I'm going to go ahead and open it up to you guys, and I'll just kind of be the wrap up on it. I've given you guys as much time as I could think of to give you to consider your answer. Who wants to go first? I would actually dare say Romney has an idea, but maybe Alex does too.
I have kind of an idea, but, well, I guess I'll try to keep it short. I was trying to find a way to phrase it without talking for 3 hours, so... I guess the best thing that I can say that I am thankful for that occurred this year is the fact that I started going to therapy and have started working through some of the deep-seated issues that I've been dealing with for years and years and years. And for the first time in my life, I am actually starting to think with a clear head. I mean, given the fact that I've actually gotten this far in NaNoWriMo is kind of a testament to that. That now that I'm getting rid of some of the skeletons in my closet, I'm actually having an easier time focusing on what I want. I can phrase it without going into a long thing, but it will be a discussion for a year-end vlog at the end of the year.
Yeah, I find it funny that you've worked so hard on all of this stuff. And for those who don't know, because you guys have been asking, we have been considering a solo run of Gaming with the Geeks with me and Romney. He has an idea, one that I think is going to destroy that therapy.
Well, technically two. One of them may destroy that therapy or may help it. I'm still making my way through it to determine if it does that yet.
Yeah, exactly. Alex, what about you? What are you thankful for this year that's been able to happen despite all of the negative stuff that we've reported on and that's just been happening in the world?
I mean, you know, this one's so tough because obviously there's a lot of things personal and, you know, both in the personal, greater scheme of things and, even in the simplest of the material world that I could go into. It's really hard to answer this question just because this is always something I have a hard time really talking about, to be honest. It's just my inner shyness comes out too much with this, but I guess it's just to, well, be alive, be alive, be living. Lots of terrible things have happened. Lots of people have died unnecessarily in selfish, terrible ways, and just the fact that I don't have to be one of those casualties that has to be mentioned in newspapers and on CNN across the country, I guess, is just enough for me.
You crackled a little bit, but I think we'll be able to. We still kind of got that. So you're thankful to be alive. I would also think that you would also be thankful for all of the people that have kind of been around for you this year, especially.
Yeah.
Bring a lot of that. Wow, your mic is acting weird for some reason.
I don't know what's up.
You might have.
I don't know.
I don't
know. It might also be my connection for some. Could be my connection. I don't know.
Could be. Because it's coming in weird. I think that you're gonna get, or your recording is gonna be fine, but yeah, it's just coming in weird on the stream. For me, I mean, I could say a number of things that I'm thankful for in life, but right now the one that especially comes to mind, given that this is something I've had to deal with a lot more recently, is the major thing I'm thankful for, especially when it comes to things like the podcast, is basically the new members of the community that have actually come around us. Because like I said, it was actually an internal struggle to be able to get just Geek News onto the iTunes format, or onto the iTunes store, so you guys could check it out. That's one podcast. Then I tried to get 3 on, and thankfully I was able to do it. But for the longest time, I was trying to get people, as many new listeners onto Geek News as I could. And now that it's there, I'm so happy that, as Romney and Alex have attested to me, and Brinton has as well, the audience that has been able to come around to you guys, as well as to myself and to the podcast. I can't begin to thank you guys, the new listeners, enough, as well as the listeners that have stuck with us during the difficult times when we were refining the product and when we were trying to continuously improve. Because we wouldn't be here if not for you guys, and we wouldn't be seeing the success that we are in our individual affairs if not for you guys. I know, especially with Alex, because we actually didn't mention this, but you just basically crossed the 500 subscriber threshold. I believe the last time I looked at Romney, he was like at 800. So at that point, you're already seeing milestones happening for you guys. Milestones, or subscribers, are starting to happen for me as well. So we thank you guys for listening to us, for giving us the feedback that you have, for joining us live for these podcasts, to join the chat, to be able to get your opinions heard, because that's really all we can ever ask for. When I started this thing off, I was going with an idea that could easily have made or break me, for lack of a better term. And I'm glad that it's been as successful as it has, so much so that I've had people like Alex, people like Aldo, people like Romney who have come around to it to help me refine the product the way that it is to this day. So I'm more thankful for you guys, especially considering the hard work that I've been able to put in there as well as these guys have. And trust me, that is not going unanswered. We have plenty of stuff coming in the holiday season that's going to be for you guys, and I think you guys are going to like it just as much as we are going to deliver it to you. And that's actually going to go ahead and do it for tonight. So we're ending on the listener question. I think that was actually a really great way to be able to end it, considering all of the negative stuff that we've had to report this entire year. It's at least helpful to us and to you guys to end on a little bit more of a positive note. But we have to wrap things up for the evening. So if people want to be able to reach out to us and be able to check out the content that we create, as well as be able to have that debate with us, to be able to share your thoughts and opinions towards them, Alex, how did they get a hold of you to be able to do that?
Like, if I'm here on YouTube, Channel Blazer 3000 is my channel, and I do anime-related content reviews. I'm sorry I'm so lazy. This is the problem with this time of year. All the life and hope just gets drained out of you. And anyway, I'm going to try and start kicking my ass back into some production, but at least it hasn't been totally dry. I've done a couple of unboxings and vlogs here and there, but I'm going to start working on stuff, I promise. And if you want to find me on social media and always be up to date on when a new video goes out, then just follow me on Twitter at AlexJShort.
Yeah, so for those who were in the stream that didn't catch that, follow him on Twitter at AlexJShort. That's the best way to be able to do it. You can also follow his channel where he's doing anime reviews that will be coming up more often and more soon, I promise. I will kick him in the butt if he doesn't give you guys content. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, sadly, your mic is still kind of acting up, man. Romney, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, you can always find me here on YouTube at youtube.com/Studio Ghost Utah. You can also find me on VidMe at vid.me/Studio Ghost. I am also on Facebook at facebook.com/Romney's Reviews, no apostrophe. And I am Romney Reviews on Twitter because Twitter didn't like the apostrophe S. And as for this week's Romney's recommendation, I'm going to recommend a documentary I stumbled upon because I was doing research for the novel that I am writing as part of NaNoWriMo, and I found a fascinating documentary that was posted by a YouTube channel called China Uncensored. Now, the channel itself is fairly political, talking about some of the less savory aspects of modern-day China, but this documentary was from a series that the channel creator was producing called Journey to the East, in which he interviews a master of 7-star praying mantis kung fu. It's a very fascinating documentary about the internal martial arts, about the nature of martial arts in general, and showing a side of the martial arts that most people don't normally get to see due to, kind of the toxic climate the martial arts have taken on over the past couple of decades. And so that's this week. Romney's recommendation is The Truth Behind Traditional Chinese Kung Fu by China Uncensored. If you follow me on Twitter, I'll be tweeting out the video once we finish the broadcast.
And then also, if you guys want to get a hold of me, first of all, with my YouTube content, you guys can reach out to me on either Facebook or Twitter at Drac. So for Facebook, it's at DracLP. Just look for that, and that's my Facebook or my YouTube channel's Facebook page. And then also at Drac2326 on Twitter. And I will get back to you as soon as I can because I do accept you guys' feedback as well as you guys' ways to like stuff that you guys want to see on the channel, as well as stuff that you guys would like to see to improve the channel. And you can also check out all the awesome content that I provide, including the fact that, and I'm going to spoil it now, when you wake up in the morning, you will have all of the episodes of Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, which was with these other two. So you guys can go enjoy that because it's going to be uploading overnight. Simply because there's still too many parts to be able to go into. So we're just going to put it in overnight. It'll be there for you in the morning. If you want to follow the podcast directly, the first thing that we ask you guys to do is either look for the GNRO podcast or Geek News podcast on iTunes, and you'll be able to get it subscribed there. Or you can go to our direct RSS feed, which is geekyweek.podomatic.com. If you want to submit stories that you would like us to cover or feedback for the podcast, you can do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. You can also subscribe to our social media feeds and be able to follow the podcast that way, and it's easy for both. You can either look on Facebook or on Twitter for Geeky NRO, and you can subscribe to there. You'll get up-to-the-minute information when we're going live, the stuff that we'll be covering. In fact, all of the holiday stuff that I'm referring to, you're going to get more information in that regard, and I'm excited to be able to reveal some of that, but I'm going to keep it to myself for now. And obviously, we revealed that The next big Geek News group review is going to be Star Wars The Last Jedi, so you guys can look forward to that. There's plenty of stuff to look forward to for the podcast, and it's because of you guys that we're able to make it work. But that's going to go ahead and do it for us. So thank you guys so much for joining us this evening. Thank you guys so much for watching, for listening, for continuing to support us in all the ways that you do. And like I said, we are not going to be here next week in observance of Thanksgiving, but we will be back the following week. So for me, for Romney, and for Alex, we'll see you guys then for more geek news, reviews, and opinions.